world of the Sinaloa cartel, silence is power, but sometimes silence is war. What if the most dangerous move El Chapo's wife ever made wasn't helping him escape from a maximum security prison through a mile-long tunnel? What if it was sitting in a room with federal prosecutors and talking? Because right now, Los Chapitos, the sons of the most feared drug lord in history, are watching their empire get dismantled piece by piece. Arrests, indictments, their brother Ovidio handed over to the United States. And the question that nobody in Sinaloa wants to say out loud is this: how much did Emma Coronel tell them? This is the story of a woman who married into one of the most powerful criminal dynasties on the planet at 17 years old, who spent years playing the loyal wife, sitting front row at her husband's trial, staring down witnesses who took the stand against El Chapo. A woman who got arrested, went to prison, did her time quietly, and then walked out. And now she's got a documentary. She's got a social media following and a modeling career, and she's showing up to Milan Fashion Week. But Los Chapitos aren't sleeping on her, and for good reason. This is Emma Coronel's silent revenge. Now, before we get into what's really going on, you gotta understand who Emma Coronel actually is. Because the media always reduced her to El Chapo's wife, like she was just decoration at the table. No cap, that's one of the biggest misreads of this whole story. Emma wasn't just a woman standing next to a powerful man. She was a dual US-Mexican citizen, born in California, raised in Sinaloa, in a family that was already deep in the narco world. Her uncle was Nacho Coronel, the leader of the Cartel del Milenio, one of the most powerful traffickers in Mexico before he was killed in 2010. Her brother, Inez Omar Coronel Aispuro, is allegedly still running operations for Los Chapitos right now as we speak. So this isn't a woman who stumbled into cartel life by accident. She was born into it. But here's what really went down. The Guzman family, Los Chapitos specifically, left Emma out to dry when she needed them most. And in a world where loyalty is supposedly everything, that's a debt that doesn't go unpaid. The question is, how does a woman like Emma Coronel collect? Not with guns, not with threats, with information. With the one weapon that's more powerful than any cartel army, her mouth. Let's go back to 2007. Emma Coronel is 16 years old. She's in the small town of Canelas, Durango, deep in the Sierra Madre Mountains, a region so controlled by the Sinaloa cartel that the federal government barely exists there. It's a place where cartel bosses are treated like local heroes, where narco corridos blast from every truck, and where young women competing in local festivals are literally judged by the men who run the mountains. Emma enters the Coffee and Guava Festival beauty pageant. She wins, and that's where Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, a man 32 years older than her, sees her and decides he wants her. Let's be real clear about something here. Emma was 17. El Chapo was one of the most powerful and feared men in the world. Her family was already connected to the narco world through her uncle. This was not some fairy tale romance. This was a young girl from an impoverished family who had limited real choices when the boss of the Sinaloa cartel decides he's interested in you. They married on her 18th birthday, and from that day forward, Emma Coronel was La Señora, the first lady of the Sinaloa cartel. For years, she played the role. She had twin daughters with El Chapo. She traveled between Mexico and the United States. She lived a life that looked glamorous from the outside. Designer clothes, access to money, the status that came with being the wife of the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere. But the cracks were already forming. During El Chapo's trial in 2019 in New York, what the media called the trial of the century, Emma sat front row every single day, stone-faced, dressed impeccably, supporting her man. And then the witnesses started talking. Multiple high-ranking cartel members took the stand and described the Sinaloa cartel's operations in brutal detail. The tunnels, the corruption, the murders. They talked about El Chapo's network of women, his infidelities, the relationships he maintained while Emma thought she was his queen. One of those women was Lucero Sanchez, a Mexican state legislator who became known as La Chapodiputada, and her relationship with El Chapo was exposed in open court right in front of Emma's face. Emma didn't react. She kept that same stone face. But she heard everything, And that right there is where the foundation of this whole story begins. Because a woman that composed, that controlled, in the face of that kind of public humiliation, she doesn't forget, and she doesn't forgive. El Chapo gets convicted in February 2019. Life sentence, no possibility of parole. Shipped off to ADX Florence, the most secure prison in the United States, where he'll spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement. And just like that, Emma Coronel's entire world collapses. The money gets complicated, the protection gets complicated, and now she's a woman with twin daughters, a famous last name, and a husband who can't do anything for her from a supermax cell in Colorado. But here's where it gets crazy. Emma doesn't fall apart. She does the opposite. Sources close to the case say she first approached U.S. investigators about the possibility of cooperating shortly after El Chapo's conviction in February 2019. Let that sink in. The ink on her husband's life sentence wasn't even dry yet. According to reporting from Vice News, there was a lot of pushback from senior officials in the Justice Department about working with her. But the case agents on the ground were comfortable talking to her and seeing if anything comes of it. Officially, nothing was ever confirmed. No formal cooperation agreement was ever publicly acknowledged. But the circumstances that followed tell a story of their own. February 22nd, 2021. Emma Coronel shows up at Dulles International Airport in Virginia, and she gets arrested. Now here's what people got wrong about that arrest. They assumed it came out of nowhere. It wasn't. Multiple sources told Vice News that Coronel essentially turned herself in, that her attorneys had been in communication with prosecutors, that this was, in some form, a controlled situation. The charges were serious on paper: international drug conspiracy, money laundering, engaging in financial transactions with a narcotics trafficker. She faced a minimum of 10 years under federal sentencing guidelines, and that's before you factor in everything she allegedly did, being the go-between for El Chapo and his sons while he was in prison, coordinating the purchase of equipment used in his 2015 tunnel escape, smuggling a GPS watch disguised as food into the prison so the tunnel diggers could find his exact location beneath his cell. That's operational. That's someone genuinely embedded in the infrastructure of one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. So how did she end up serving only about 2.5 years? Prosecutors asked the judge for leniency. They described her role as minimal. They called her a cog in a very large wheel. They said she only did what she did because she was married to El Chapo, and the judge gave her 3 years, well below the 10-year mandatory minimum, well below the 4 years the prosecutors themselves had asked for. In the legal world, that kind of sentence reduction doesn't happen because a judge felt generous. That happens when a defendant has provided value to the government. And in Sinaloa, where people understand exactly how the U.S. federal system works, what Los Chapitos saw was simple. El Chapo's wife got arrested. She pleaded guilty. She got a suspiciously short sentence, and she walked out. Now the paranoia sets in. Now let me break down who Los Chapitos actually are, because this matters. Los Chapitos is the collective name for El Chapo's sons, primarily Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar, Alfredo Guzman Salazar, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, and Ovidio Guzman Lopez. These 4 men inherited the Sinaloa cartel's operations after their father's arrest. But Los Chapitos were not El Chapo. Their father was a criminal genius who built an organization with military precision over decades. His sons had the name, the resources, the network, but also the ego and recklessness that comes with inheriting an empire you didn't build yourself. After El Chapo's extradition in 2017, Los Chapitos went harder into fentanyl production, got flashier, and entered into a brutal internal war with the other half of the Sinaloa cartel, the faction loyal to Ismael El Mayo Zambada. This war between Los Chapitos and La Mayiza tore the cartel apart. Hundreds died. Entire neighborhoods in Culiacan became battlegrounds. Civilians got caught in the crossfire. And where was Emma Coronel during all of this? She was watching, quietly, from a deliberate distance. In September 2024, right when the violence was at its peak, Emma joined a public call for peace in Sinaloa. Not a strong statement, not sides being taken publicly, just a signal. A message that she was positioning herself as someone above the conflict. But then came the pizza tattoo. Emma posted a video showing a tattoo on her left hand, a pizza slice. Sounds simple, right? Except in cartel symbolism, the pizza emoji is the symbol of Los Chapitos and their faction. Their supporters use it as an identifier, so in the middle of a brutal internal war, El Chapo's wife posts a video showing she's tattooed the symbol of Los Chapitos on her hand. That's not an accident, that's a message. But the question is, what message and to who? Here's where it gets real. The formal legal language around Emma Coronel's case has always been careful. Her attorneys publicly stated she did not agree to cooperate with federal investigators. And technically, in terms of a formal signed cooperation agreement requiring her to testify against specific individuals, that may be true. But cooperation in the federal system is not always that clean. There are formal cooperation agreements where defendants become official witnesses. And then there's the gray zone, where defendants have conversations with investigators, provide context, fill in gaps, answer questions about people and events without ever signing a piece of paper. That gray zone is where a lot of the most valuable information actually lives, and Emma Coronel had a lot of information to give. She wasn't just El Chapo's wife in the social sense, she was his operational messenger. She carried his instructions to his sons while he was imprisoned in Mexico. She coordinated payments for his escape attempts. She was in contact with the cartel's command and control structure at a period when El Chapo's physical access to it was completely restricted. That means she had direct knowledge of how Los Chapitos communicated with their father during imprisonment, the financial infrastructure used to move cartel money, the identities of people inside the Mexican prison system who accepted bribes, and the logistics of how the 2015 escape was planned and executed. That's the kind of operational knowledge that federal prosecutors building cases against Los Chapitos in the Eastern District of New York would pay serious weight for. And here's the timeline that makes people raise their eyebrows. February 2021, Emma Coronel is arrested. June 2021, she pleads guilty. November 2021, she gets 3 years, dramatically below sentencing guidelines. July 2023, Ovidio Guzman is extradited to the United States. September 2023, Emma Coronel walks out of prison. 2024, multiple high-ranking Sinaloa cartel members face new indictments in U.S. courts. Is that timeline proof of cooperation? No. Is it suggestive? Every federal prosecutor and cartel analyst who looked at it said the same thing. The sentencing reduction alone is nearly impossible to explain without some form of benefit to the government. A former narcotics prosecutor from the Eastern District of New York put it plainly. Emma's sentence is a very clear demonstration of how prosecutors can manipulate the sentencing guidelines to either punish or reward a defendant. Reward. That word does a lot of heavy lifting. Now here's another layer. In November 2025, Emma Coronel sat down for a 2-hour documentary on Oxygen called Married to El Chapo. Emma Coronel speaks. Her first major on-camera interview. She talked about falling in love with El Chapo at 17. She talked about the emotional devastation of hearing about his affair with Lucero Sanchez in open court. She talked about prison, accountability, her twin daughters. On the surface, it looks like a media play. A woman humanizing herself, building a brand, trying to move past the cartel chapter of her life. But look at the timing. This documentary drops in late 2025. Los Chapitos are in a full-scale internal war. The U.S. government has been picking apart the Sinaloa cartel's leadership for 2 years. Ovidio is in custody, and El Chapo's wife decides now is the time to go public with her story. That's calculated. Everything Emma Coronel does is calculated. The documentary isn't just a media play, it's a positioning move. It's Emma Coronel establishing her own narrative, separate from El Chapo, separate from Los Chapitos, separate from the cartel, before someone else defines it for her. Now let's talk about what's happening right now. In July 2024, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, El Chapo's partner of decades, the man who had stayed out of U.S. custody longer than almost anyone, landed in El Paso, Texas. Not entirely voluntarily. He was lured onto a plane by Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of Los Chapitos, who then flew him directly into U.S. hands. Los Chapitos had given up El Mayo. El Chapo's sons had handed their father's most powerful ally to the United States government. The result was immediate and catastrophic. El Mayo's faction declared war on Los Chapitos. Culiacan became a war zone. Hundreds died, and in the middle of all this chaos, people started doing the math on who else might have been cooperating, who else was feeding information upward, who else had made deals. Emma Coronel's name kept coming up, and then in January 2026, something happened that made the whole picture even more complicated. Mexican federal forces raided properties in Petatlan, Guerrero, and found a drug lab producing methamphetamine and synthetic opioids. The lab was linked, according to federal security reports, to Inez Omar Coronel Ispuro, Emma's older brother, who is allegedly an active member of Los Chapitos. So the woman Los Chapitos suspect may have cooperated against them has a brother actively working inside their organization. Think about what that means. Think about the leverage that creates, and the danger. One of the most telling things in this entire story is what Los Chapitos didn't do. When Emma was arrested in February 2021, where was the public support from El Chapo's sons? Nowhere. No statements, no symbolic gestures, no visible outreach. When she was going through sentencing, nothing. When she was in prison, no sign of solidarity from the Guzman camp. For a cartel that wraps itself in the language of family and loyalty, that silence speaks volumes. And Emma noticed. Of course she did. Now let me bring this home. What Emma Coronel's story really is, underneath all the cartel drama, the courtroom footage, the documentaries, and the Instagram posts, is the story of what happens to women who get absorbed into these power structures. She was 17 when El Chapo decided she would be his wife. She was from a family already embedded in the narco world. She had limited real options, and she did what she had to do to survive. First as a cartel wife, then as a federal defendant, and now as a free woman building something of her own out of the wreckage. Is she innocent? No. She admitted to her crimes. She knows what she was part of. But the way this story gets told, where Emma is either the loyal cartel wife or the dangerous informant, misses the full human complexity of who she is and where she came from. Here's what I want you to understand about the silent revenge. It's not Emma Coronel hiring hitmen. It's not some dramatic confrontation. The silent revenge is Emma Coronel living well, building a public persona that Los Chapitos can't touch without making themselves look worse. Speaking openly about her life in a documentary while cartel wars rage and indictments pile up. Being free, sitting in Milan fashion shows, posting on Instagram, raising her daughters, while Ovidio sits in federal custody and the cartel her husband built tears itself apart. That's the revenge, survival, visibility, a life that goes on while everything around her burns. And if she did cooperate, if she did tell U.S. prosecutors things that helped them build cases against Los Chapitos, then every conviction, every extradition, every arrest that follows is her fingerprint, invisible, silent, but permanent. Let's run it down on where everyone stands right now. El Chapo is serving life in ADX Florence. His power is gone. Emma Coronel is free, based in the United States, building a media presence, active on social media, and her relationship with the Guzman family is essentially non-existent. She's made clear through everything she does that she's building a life that belongs to her. Los Chapitos are fractured, at war, and under relentless U.S. federal pressure. Ovidio is in custody. The internal war with La Maíza has cost them enormously in territory, manpower, and credibility. Their father's network is not their network. And the cracks in the foundation are showing. In the narco world, the most dangerous person is never the one making the most noise. It's the one sitting quietly, watching everything, saying nothing, until the moment they decide to say something. And by then, it's already too late for the people it matters to. Emma Coronel spent years being underestimated. She was the wife. She was the pretty face in the courtroom. She was the beauty queen from Durango who got swept up in something bigger than herself. But she was also the woman who carried messages for one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. The woman who coordinated a prison escape from the outside. The woman who, when the government came for her, somehow ended up walking out with a sentence that baffled legal analysts and made cartel members nervous. Now she's free, she's talking, she's building, and Los Chapitos are watching from the wreckage of a war they may have brought on themselves. Whether Emma Coronel's revenge was calculated from the beginning, or whether it's simply the consequence of a woman refusing to be destroyed by the world she was born into, the result is the same. She's still here, and in her world, that says everything. If you made it to the end of this one, drop a comment and tell me what you think. Did Emma cooperate? Is her survival strategy genius or dangerous? And should Los Chapitos be worried? Hit subscribe because we're going deep on the Sinaloa cartel's collapse next. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Stay safe, stay informed. And remember, in this world, silence is never just silence.